By the way, you have to do something with Mexico. Mexico has to get their act together because they're pouring through Mexico, and we're going to have to do something. We'd love Mexico to do it. They're capable of doing it. But unfortunately, the cartels are very strong in Mexico.
I remember one time you actually, speaking of Mexico, I asked you about Claudia Sheinbaum, and you told me at one point you had offered to send U.S. troops into Mexico to combat drug trafficking there. Is that something you would
like
to her
Claudia.
about?
I think she's a terrific person. I would say every single time I talk to her, I offered to send troops.
And she's just not willing?
She's concerned. She's a little afraid. The cartels are running Mexico. Whether you like it or not, it's not nice to say, but the cartels are running Mexico.
Late Tuesday night, the lights were still on inside the Oval Office. President Trump sat behind the resolute desk, phone in hand. On the other end of the line, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum. The call lasted 11 minutes. No readout was released, no press briefing followed, but within hours something shifted. Military transport planes were spotted heading south, not toward the Middle East, not toward Eastern Europe, toward the US-Mexico border. At the Pentagon, officials went quiet. At the State Department, scheduled briefings were suddenly postponed. And in Mexico City, emergency meetings were called before sunrise. This is not a diplomatic spat. This is not political theater. This is the United States positioning military assets near the border of an allied nation, something no American president has done in over 100 years. Since 1916, when Woodrow Wilson sent troops into Mexico chasing Pancho Villa, no commander-in-chief has dared to cross this line. Until now. Behind closed doors, sources familiar with the matter say the tension is unlike anything they've seen. And what's being discussed in Washington right now is not a bluff. The question everyone is asking tonight: how far is President Trump willing to go? And what happens if Mexico doesn't back down? To understand what's happening right now, you have to understand one thing first. This didn't come out of nowhere. For months, President Trump has been warning, publicly and privately, that Mexico is not doing enough to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. He's called it an invasion. He's called it a national security emergency. And he's made one thing very clear: if Mexico won't act, America will. But warnings are one thing. What's happening now is something else entirely. According to multiple reports, the administration has drawn up contingency plans, not just for border enforcement, but for direct military operations inside Mexican territory. Let that sink in for a moment. We're not talking about more border patrol agents. We're not talking about surveillance drones. We're talking about American soldiers potentially operating on foreign soil without the consent of the Mexican government. This is a line the United States has never crossed with a neighboring ally, and the implications are staggering. Now, the White House has not confirmed any specific military plans. Officially, the administration says all options remain on the table. But here's what we do know. The Department of Defense has quietly moved resources to staging areas near the southern border. Special operations commanders have been briefed on potential scenarios. And intelligence agencies have ramped up surveillance on cartel leadership, the kind of tracking that typically precedes targeted action. None of this is normal. None of this is routine. And none of this has gone unnoticed in Mexico City. President Claudia Sheinbaum, who took office just months ago, is facing the greatest test of her young administration. She's caught between two impossible pressures. On one side, the United States, her country's largest trading partner, demanding immediate and aggressive action against the cartels. On the other side, the cartels themselves, who control entire regions of Mexico and have proven willing to unleash unimaginable violence against anyone who challenges them. It's a nightmare scenario, and she has very few good options. Here's where things get even more complicated. Mexico's sovereignty is not just a legal concept, it's a matter of deep national pride. For over a century, Mexican leaders have defined their foreign policy by one principle above all others: non-intervention. No foreign troops on Mexican soil, no American military operations inside their borders. This is sacred ground in Mexican politics, and any president who allows it would face a political firestorm unlike anything in modern history. So when President Trump talks about military action in Mexico, he's not just threatening a policy change. He's threatening to shatter a relationship that has held, however imperfectly, for generations. And President Sheinbaum knows it. In her public statements, she's tried to walk a fine line, expressing willingness to cooperate while firmly rejecting any suggestion that Mexico would accept foreign military presence. But behind the scenes, sources say the tone is far more tense. Mexican officials feel blindsided, they feel disrespected, and they're quietly furious. Now let's be clear about something. The fentanyl crisis is real, it's devastating, and it's killing Americans at a rate that should shock the conscience of every citizen. Over 70,000 Americans died from synthetic opioid overdoses last year alone. Most of that fentanyl comes from Mexico, manufactured with precursor chemicals shipped from China. The cartels have turned into industrial-scale drug operations, more sophisticated and more deadly than anything we've seen before. This is not a made-up crisis. This is not political exaggeration. Families across America are being destroyed, and the source of that destruction flows across the southern border every single day. President Trump's frustration is shared by millions of Americans. The question is, what's the right response? And that's where things get dangerous. Military action inside Mexico sounds decisive. It sounds strong. But the risks are almost impossible to overstate. First, the cartels are not a conventional enemy. They don't wear uniforms. They don't hold territory in the traditional sense. They blend into civilian populations. They control local governments through bribery and terror. Any military operation would face the same challenges the US faced in Afghanistan, only 90 miles from Texas, in a country of 130 million people. Second, Mexico would almost certainly view any unauthorized military action as an act of war. That's not an exaggeration. That's how international law works. The consequences for trade, for diplomacy, for regional stability would be catastrophic. Billions of dollars in commerce cross that border every single day. American companies depend on Mexican manufacturing. Mexican workers depend on American markets. A rupture in that relationship wouldn't just hurt Mexico. It would send shockwaves through the American economy. And third, there's no guarantee military action would even work. The cartels are decentralized. Take out one leader, another rises within days. Destroy one lab, 10 more spring up somewhere else. This is a hydra, and bullets alone won't kill it. So what happens next? That's the question no one in Washington can answer with certainty. Some officials believe President Trump is using maximum pressure as a negotiating tactic, pushing Mexico to the edge to extract concessions without actually crossing the line. Others aren't so sure. They point to the troop movements. They point to the intelligence operations. They point to the tone inside the White House. And they say this feels different. This feels real. One thing is certain. The next few weeks will be critical. If Mexico announces major new operations against the cartels, the pressure might ease. If they don't, or if another mass casualty event linked to fentanyl hits American headlines, all bets are off. President Trump has staked his political reputation on being the president who finally secured the border, and he's shown, time and time again, that he's willing to take actions no one thought possible. For Americans watching this unfold, the stakes couldn't be higher. This isn't just about Mexico. This is about what kind of country the United States wants to be. A country that respects the sovereignty of its neighbors, even when those neighbors fail to stop threats flowing across their borders, or a country willing to act alone, with overwhelming force, regardless of international norms. There are no easy answers. There are only choices and consequences. Tonight, somewhere in Washington, those choices are being weighed, and somewhere along the border, American troops are watching, waiting for an order that could change everything. What happens next is anyone's guess. But one thing is clear. The line that has held for over 100 years is closer to breaking than it has ever been, and once it breaks, there's no going back.